Welcome in, everybody. Hey, how's it going? Cornhole Mish here, and we are going to continue our conversation about goals. So, we've been talking about how to set our goals, what's necessary for the foundation, why we need to understand our big why for setting our goals. We've talked about habits and how to change our habits and some myths about habits, and we went really deep into habits last week. As always, if you're watching on Facebook, you're seeing slides. If you're watching on Instagram, you're seeing me. And today we're going to talk about one of the missing puzzle pieces that you need for setting and achieving your goals. It's also what you need for changing habits. It's kind of like the glue that holds everything together, and that is mindfulness. And if mindfulness is something that you've heard about, hopefully you can learn something new. And if it's not, then buckle in because it's a super exciting topic, I think. All right, so what is mindfulness? Mindfulness is the ability to be there in the moment with things exactly as they are without trying to change anything. Just be where your feet are is another way of saying that. It's quite possibly one of the hardest things you could do. It's really difficult to be where we are unless everything's great. If everything's great, look, if you're getting a massage, pretty easy to be where we are. That's a fantastic experience. I'm happy to be there. You're on vacation. Maybe it's easy to be where you are. The cool thing about yoga is we learn a lot about how to be where we are and be present and be with our breath in challenging positions or poses. I think that's one of the things that yoga is able to really teach us, and why yoga and mindfulness sort of are going hand to hand or are married, so to speak. So mindfulness is just being where you are. You know, we can use presence and mindfulness sort of interchangeably here. The mind is often dominated by dissatisfaction and unawareness. If we're not mindful, it's very easy for our mind to get into a habit of dissatisfaction or pessimism or what's going wrong or what could go wrong, and a lot of unawareness of what's happening. When I teach mindful eating, for example, mindful eating, the most important thing to learn about is mindless eating first. Like, when am I just eating without even paying attention? So, noticing, or I should say, bringing awareness into your life is going to be your biggest goal when it comes to mindfulness. Is just, when am I, and we talked about this, about your unconscious reactions and your unconscious habits, right? Those things we're doing that we're not aware of, and how the way that we heal that, or the solution to that, is mindfulness. So we're gonna, we might think this or that, and then we want this or that, and those two things are often in conflict. So we think, like, for example, I want to make more money, and then we want more money. Yes, I understand. Like, that's the point of why you think you want more money. But the problem is that there's all these unconscious things happening that are actually bigger wants than the more money. So, for example, we don't want to be left out of a situation. So we spend money we don't have to be part of that, even though we're saying we want to make more money or have more money, but then we spend it on this or that because we have this unconscious need of FOMO or whatever. That's kind of a weird example, but it's the awareness of everything that's happening. So you notice wherever there's these conflicts of things that aren't really working together. So oftentimes we don't know what we're thinking or feeling or doing. We don't know what we don't know. And in the body specifically, we will often miss and ignore and abuse and lose control to autopilot. Autopilot is great if it's getting you the results that you want, and we do want a large portion of our life to be in some kind of autopilot so that we're not constantly efforting, because that would be exhausting. But if our autopilot is taking us in the direction that we don't want to go, then it is crucial that we wake up and go, wait a second, I don't like where this boat is taking me right now. And if I don't get up and grab the it's probably not a steering wheel in a boat, but whatever, the wheel, and turn this around, like, I'm going to keep going in this direction. But then, because it takes so much effort to change directions, we will only do it for a period of time, and then we get exhausted, and then we just let go of the wheel again, and now we're back on that same track. So it's about knowing how to turn that wheel in a way that doesn't create so much effort and exhaustion and burnout that we can keep turning it the other direction. Like it's actually fairly easy, potentially even easier. And all of this takes a level of awareness and mindfulness. A lot of times we become insensitive to how the body's affected by the environment and the actions and the thoughts and the emotions, and this can cause us to feel out of control. Like we have to know that the things that we think and the situations that we put ourselves in and the environment that we're in, whether it's toxic or healthy, all these things are impacting the body. And when we're not aware, then all the impact the body's actually taking on is lost on us. And then one day we wake up and it's like, whoa, how did I gain all this weight? Or whoa, how did I get here? Or how am I still single? Or like years go by and we're like, whoa, it's like that wake up of things get so bad or things get to a place that we really don't like, and we have that moment of like where we wake up and become aware. And all kinds of things preceded that, and most importantly, the body was screaming things at you to wake you up. We see this with a lot of pain or chronic conditions or extreme sort of health problems. Like stupid things I'm sorry, my husband was texting me and I was reading it at the same time. These things come up and then we don't realize it, and then it's like you have that moment if you wake up. But if you would have listened to the whisper of the body when it was like, ooh, say something right there, I don't like it. Or if it's like something feels off and you ignore your intuition, or there's a multitude of things. Your body's constantly talking to you. Something like weight loss, for example, there is actually no cure for it. I know right now that's a weird thing to say, because when I wrote this slide years ago, there was, of course, some kind of fad at that time. It wasn't Ozempic, that's the fad right now, but it's funny to see that written there because of where we are in the weight loss world currently. But that is something that I always like to tell people who are on a weight loss path, if that is the path that you're on, because we are sort of led to believe that there is a cure for it medicine-wise and Western medicine-wise, and there's not. It is so much deeper than that. Practice mindfulness by remembering the best we can with kindness and a discipline to be present. I think it's really important to hone in on the idea of the best we can with kindness, because I do come from the world of weight loss. When I would teach mindfulness to my weight loss students, they would treat it the same way they would treat a diet. So it's like, oh, I'm going to be, the freaking most mindful person in the world. Watch out for me. I'm going to do it perfectly. I'm going to be as present as any student has ever been present. And it's like, okay, you're sort of missing the point. Like now you're just treating mindfulness as a dieting practice, and that's not good either. So there is a discipline to be present, but it is also just doing the best we can with kindness. It's got to be very realistic too. Awareness and relaxation and healing cannot be forced. The example of that is that you cannot force yourself to fall asleep, right? Try forcing yourself to fall asleep and see how well that works. No, it doesn't. Awareness is not something that can be forced. Healing cannot be forced. Relaxation cannot be forced. And I would say that your results that you really want cannot be forced, not long term. So the best mindset to have is, yeah, you can have some skepticism. I always sort of approach things with skepticism. I don't just believe everything I hear, and I don't think you should either, but also open-minded. So if you believe it won't work, it won't. I can't tell you how many conversations I've had with people over the years that I've been working with anything, weight loss, cornhole stuff, everything. It's like, well, I don't know if that's going to work for me. That mindset absolutely won't work for you. Yeah, we're screwed before we started. So it's okay to be like, I don't know if it'll work for me, but also I'm going to hold out hope that it will. I'm going to actually be open-minded that it will. Also, if you believe it's the answer to all your prayers, that's not good either. And that's a lot of times that sort of like miracle pill mentality of like, oh, all I need to do is this, and then all my problems are solved. Like, this is going to solve everything. Like, it's not that either. It's somewhere in the middle of those. So the 7 pillars of mindfulness are going to be, and I believe this is from Jon Kabat-Zinn, if I remember right. Like I said, I wrote this 10 plus years ago. But non-judgment, patience, beginner's mind, and we're going to go through each one of these, so don't feel like if you're taking notes, don't feel like you have to scribble it down super quick. Beginner's mind, trust, non-striving, acceptance, and letting go. So this is sort of what creates mindfulness. And the first one is quite potentially the hardest for most people. Non-judgment. That's when you're paying attention to your moment to moment experiences, but you don't get caught up in ideas and opinions and likes and dislikes. You just sort of like, I'm aware of what's happening, but I'm not judging what's happening. So my favorite thing to say is, isn't this interesting? So like when we do something that we don't like, or let's say we said we were going to work out and then we don't, or let's say we thought we were going to do really well at our cornhole game and we don't, anything like that, my response in my mind is, isn't that interesting? Isn't it interesting that I didn't do the thing I thought I was going to do? Isn't it interesting that I threw horribly today in my league? Isn't it interesting? Like, it's just interest. It's not judgment. It's not creating a bunch of personalized meaning out of like, oh my goodness, I sucked at cornhole today, so that means I shouldn't play anymore. I'm awful at this game. Like, that's all that meaning that we create with a lot of judgment. But it's just, isn't it interesting? Isn't it interesting I did that? I do this with a lot of thoughts too. Like when I have weird thoughts, I'm like, that's weird that I thought that. That's interesting that I thought that. I wonder what that's about, right? It's that curiosity. Everything we see is labeled and categorized by the mind, and then we react with value. That's what I mean by assigning meaning. So it's like as these experiences happen, we automatically reach to label it like, oh, that means, right? That's the most dangerous place you can live is, oh, that means, right? Oh, my boyfriend or girlfriend broke up with me. That means I'm unlovable. I gained weight. That means I'm a failure, right? All that meaning that we attach is where we get in trouble. We want to just observe and observe your reactions. Like, wow, I'm getting really heated when this person said this thing to me. I wonder what that's about. As opposed to, oh, I'm feeling some type of way from what they said. That means what they did was wrong, or that means, I'm wrong, or whatever you like. All those, we want to strip all of that away. And then don't judge your judging, right? Like we as humans are judgmental, and that's part of our nature. And so when we see someone like, oh, she shouldn't be wearing that, or I bet they starved themselves to be skinny or whatever. I don't know what dudes think. I can only tell you what chicks think. But and then we like judge ourselves for judging. Like, oh, I shouldn't be thinking that. That's wrong. That's not helpful either. So it's once again going, oh, interesting that I'm having that judgmental thought or that awareness of what's happening. So it's just literally watching it. It's just watching what's happening, getting curious about yourself. The reason why I'm so passionate about psychology and human behavior is because I'm so fascinated about why we do what we do. Why would somebody say they want to work out and then avoid it for the next 6 months solid? Like, when I say curious, I don't mean judgment. Like, I'm legitimately curious about what's happening to create that experience. That is the mindset you want to have there. The next one is patience. Patience is a virtue, as they say. It's a form of wisdom. Things have to unfold in their own time. And I know as humans, we absolutely hate that. We don't want them to unfold in their own time. We want them to unfold in our time, the timeline we created in our mind. Especially if you're in a situation you don't like. You're like, I have a very strict, quick timeline for this. I don't want to tolerate this anymore. I don't want to have this weight on me anymore. I don't want to keep sucking at cornhole. I don't want to not be able to afford things. Like, let's speed this up. I get that. The myth, I guess you would say, is that it actually happens a lot quicker the less attached you are to it happening in your timeline. Things actually unfold pretty quickly. And we don't have to fill up on our moments with activity and more thinking to be rich. That's sort of what our culture teaches us, is like more is better. If 30 minutes of cardio is good, then 60 minutes is better. That's not always true. Here's an easy one. If 2 cookies are good, then 6 are better. I can tell you right now that eating 6 cookies for me is not better than 2 because I'll feel sick. So we live in this more is better, and we're constantly wanting to feel rich in all the different ways. And that includes financial, but it also includes, rich on love and rich on family time and rich on hobbies and all of that. And it actually is not as much quantity wise that we need. It's really about quality. And so we don't need to fill everything up to feel rich. We can really let things play out and trust the journey that we're on. And well, trust will come later, but um, just be along for the ride and know that it's taking us where we want to go because we're actually present, awake, and aware. Once again, if you're in autopilot, it's going to take you where it's always taken you. So I get the feeling of, oh, I don't want to be patient and wait around because I don't like where this is taking me. But if you've woken up, and literally the only solution here is awareness. There's nothing else you have to do but be aware. Then that you're already turning the ship. Beginner's mind, so having that ability to see things as if it's for the first time. Even if you've learned something already, you can always learn more. If you listen to this same exact thing I'm saying 10 times, you would hear something different every time. So knowing that we can always learn more is so important, and it prevents us from getting stuck in a rut of our own expertise, which often thinks it knows more than it does. If you have a teenager or a toddler, you know what I'm talking about. They hear one thing and they're like, think they're the expert, and that we as parents know nothing about it. And so we just roll our eyes and go, okay, yeah, you know everything. Okay, teenager. But we'll do this as adults even, right? We'll think, oh, I already know that. This happens a lot in the weight loss industry for me. I'll have people say, "Oh, I already know how to lose weight. I'm just not doing it." I'm like, well, I'm going to go ahead and challenge that because I think that you know how everybody else teaches weight loss, but I don't think that necessarily means that's how your body wants to lose weight until we actually ask it. So let's go ahead and reserve the right to be wrong. And that's really the most important piece of this is we're willing to be wrong. We're willing to be wrong about what we think we know, especially the things we feel like we are experts in. Be willing to be wrong. No moment is the same. Every single moment is unique. Things can always change. Every time you become a little bit more aware or you learn something new, it changes the information that comes after it. And so we're always willing to say, oh, maybe I was wrong about that, or I feel like I know some information about that, but what else could I learn about it? Or what different viewpoint or perspective can I have? That's only going to open up your world to be able to be more aware, awake, and mindful. All right, trust is the most difficult one. It's really difficult to trust in where life is taking us and where our results are and what we can achieve with our goals if we're not getting what we want currently. It's like, well, why would I trust if I don't like where I'm at right now? Why would I trust it would get better? And it's very difficult to come to that place. Now, people who have a religious background, a faith-based background might find this slightly easier because I think that it's something that's taught. I don't know. I grew up Jewish. We didn't, at least from my experience, talk about it a lot. Or I wasn't paying attention. I don't know. But usually people with a faith or religious background have an easier time trusting. They say, you know, let go, let God, or I trust where, you know, my whoever, God, whoever you believe in is taking me. So it's a little bit easier to let go of things. Um, but potentially even not. I mean, I was talking to my friend who's been Catholic her entire life, and she's saying things. I'm like, don't you learn about trust? Isn't that like a big thing about what you learn about is trusting into where like you're being directed? I don't know. I mean, I didn't go to Catholic school, but I feel like that's what's taught there. But it's a super important lesson to trust in where life is taking you. But I understand that you wouldn't want to trust if you've been in autopilot and that autopilot's taking you a direction you don't like. It totally makes sense that you would have an issue with trust. If you've had your trust broken many times, it makes sense you'd have a difficult time with trust. I'm just asking you to kind of have fresh eyes, going back to beginner's mind and saying, well, what would it look like if I fully trusted where things are taking me now that I'm learning new information, I'm more aware, I'm more mindful, I'm more present and awake? What could that look like now? So even if you make mistakes, we always want to trust that there's something we can get from that that's going to benefit us, and that means we turn inward rather than outward. If I have cornhole players listening to this is so important. If you miss a bag or you have a bad game or you feel like you let your partner down, the normal reaction or response to that is to go outward. Like, oh, the bags, oh, the boards, oh, the wind, oh, the whatever, right? Something external outside of us. Instead of turning inward. And because my first question when a cornhole player asks me for help is, what state were you in? That's an internal state, right? That what state were you in when you missed that bag? And I'm talking about thoughts, feelings, body sensations, as well as what preceded that, right? What was the trigger that happened right before that that changed your state? Because I guarantee that you didn't miss an open board slide shot in the same state that you just hit that, airmail drag. Like those were two different states. So most likely, if you just hit a big shot, that changed your state, not in a bad way. You got excited, but that's still a different state. And so you would have had to transition back into the same state to hit that shot. And so that's an internal process. But coming back to trust, that means that you do inherently trust yourself to be successful at the game. And instead of saying, oh, well, this happened or that happened outside of me, we're going inward and saying, oh, well, I wasn't in the ideal state. And so that's fine. That happens. And I trust that I will be able to get into the right state and be able to perform at a high level. And I trust my body to be able to do that. I trust my arm to be able to work correctly, if you will, and that everything will be great. And then another thing to mention here is anybody who is imitating somebody else, no matter who it is heading in the wrong direction. This is going to play into like envy and also people pleasing and things like that. I can remember even as a child, like being at the mall and having like, and looking at a shirt and thinking, oh, this is cute. And then the person next to me, my peer, is like, oh, that's ugly. And immediately I'm like, oh yeah, that's ugly. It's like, why can't I say it's cute just because they said it's ugly? I'm automatically going into a people-pleasing place. I'm imitating the peer next to me to attempt to fit in, to be accepted. And I'm not trusting my own thoughts, my own uniqueness, my own intuition of, it's a silly example, it's a stupid shirt, but you get the point. So anytime that we are trying to be somebody else, or we're envious of somebody else, or we're imitating, I mean, even down to like imitating somebody's throw in cornhole, it's like you're never going to be that person. So you can definitely pull pieces from different people's, like, oh, I really like this technique, or I like this mindset this person has, or I like this mantra this person has, but then we still are going to put it into our own bodies and make it make sense to us, and have it be unique to us, and trust that our unique expression of whatever it is right. So and not everyone's going to grip the bag exactly the same, and yours is right as long as that's working for you, and the person next to you isn't better just because they're succeeding at it, right? Trust that that's not because they're gripping the bag a little bit different than you, and that's why they're more successful. There's so much more nuance there. And that's just a cornhole example of that. Okay, number 5. Come on, work with me. Non-striving. This is another difficult one, especially in our culture that teaches that the harder you work, the better you are. I talked about this in a post recently about hustle culture, how dangerous hustle culture is. And the funny thing is, I immediately got a post that said, a comment that said, well, I think that putting in hard work is super valuable. And I laughed, because when did I say you couldn't work hard? I just said not to hustle. But we automatically assume that not hustling is not doing anything. And there's so much in between those two things. So, for example, I don't subscribe to the hustle mindset anymore, but I'm also a very hard worker. And those are not the same thing. It's about the energy behind it. Meditation is a non-doing. So anytime that you meditate to accomplish something, or to do something, or to change something, you've already lost at meditation. The good news about that is you can't fail at it. Like literally just taking a moment to notice your breath, or take a few deep breaths, that's it. It's the pause, it's the break, it's the non-striving, it's the non-doing. We, in our culture, in America specifically, need a lot more moments of non-doing, because we're constantly going. It's not healthy, especially with cell phones and things like that. It's not healthy to be constantly on. We need breaks, and watching TV and doom scrolling and things like that, which, no judgment, I do them too, but those aren't breaks. We just use them as breaks. It's entertainment breaks if you're trying to get a break from working or things like that, but It's not a non-doing, a true non-doing. So you're better off stopping and taking 5 deep breaths than any type of other traditional break that you might take. If you sit down with an intention, then you introduce the idea that you're not okay right now. We're getting kind of nuanced in this idea of non-striving because, in yoga, for example, we always talk about what's your intention for your practice today. So it's not that having an intention like I'm feeling really angry, I'm going to take 5 deep breaths. That's not a bad thing, right? Just because you set an intention to it, that's okay. You are saying that you're not okay right now, and that's okay too. To be like, I'm feeling a little bit angry or I'm feeling a little bit whatever. And so I know I need to pause. But what you could do to make that even more of a non-striving situation is to watch it and embrace it and be aware of it and not feel like you have to change it or do anything with it. So it's noticing, let's use the anger. Noticing the anger. So you're feeling maybe heat in your chest or your face. Maybe you're feeling, your heart beat a little faster. You're feeling tension in your chest, whatever. So whatever the body sensations are, you like noticing that, like, wow, I'm feeling really angry. The emotion of anger. You notice the thoughts, like I want to punch something, I want to scream, I want to whatever. It's like you're noticing all these things, and then just the act of pausing and noticing what's happening, that is the work right there. It's not even taking the 5 deep breaths. It's just the ability to pause and notice what's happening. Like, wow, I'm noticing my body. I'm noticing my feelings. I'm noticing my thoughts. That's the hardest work you could possibly do, is just allowing it to be there without needing it to go away, without changing it, without even needing to take the 5 deep breaths unless you feel inclined to do so, which most likely you naturally will want to take a few deep breaths, and that will happen intuitively, as opposed to, oh, I'm feeling heat in my chest, I need to take 5 deep breaths. It's more of, well, I'm just going to notice what's happening right now and then let whatever happens. You might find yourself clench your fists or slam your fists on the table, like let your body do whatever it naturally wants to do in those moments. Well, don't hurt someone, but within your space. And breathing might be a part of that, but typically there's some kind of movement or sound. We say that everything moves out of the body with breath, movement, and sound. So you might notice that you want to do one of those or all of those things. The best way to achieve our goals is to back off from striving for results and start focusing on seeing and accepting things as they are, moment to moment. What if I didn't need any of this to change? What if I just noticed what was happening around me? I've just brought extreme awareness. And the best analogy I can give to this is with kids, because if you have a kid who's having a big emotional reaction or a tantrum of some sort, trying to control that tantrum is very unsuccessful, right? Especially if they're screaming and flailing and you're like trying to keep them from flailing and trying to quiet them down. It's like you're trying to control the situation and it just makes it worse. Or have you ever told someone who's kind of like heated, like just calm down? Like that's like the word, like you're telling them the experience you're having right now is not okay with me and I need you to change it. And because they're already having an experience that they're not probably wanting to be in, nobody wants to have big, huge emotional reactions. And then you tell them to stop having those feelings and those reactions, then that amplifies it. Instead, if you take a child who's having a tantrum and you bring presence to it and awareness and you give them like space to have that reaction safely, it's going to dissipate very quickly. So it's like, hey, I see you're having a lot of emotion right now. What it looks like you need to flail your arms. Let's go somewhere where you can safely do that and not hit other people. Or let's go somewhere where you can scream the way you need to scream. Giving that expression and allowing it to be there without telling it it's not okay and that it needs to go away allows that to feel heard and valued and understood, and then you can move on very quickly. I know that's an easier said than done kind of situation, but it goes along with this idea of non-striving, not forcing, not pushing, just letting things be. Once again, it doesn't mean that you sit around and stare at the wall and want things to change. You just are more driven by your intuition, which can only happen once you're not constantly in motion and doing, and you're breathing and you're slowing down and you're present. And then you let things sort of unfold naturally and you trust where you're being taken. So it's a very different energy than, I'll go back to the weight loss example again. It's like when someone comes and says, I just need to eat less and move more, or I just need to eat less carbs and less sugar. And it's like that idea has already been decided before they've even taken a step, because they read it somewhere, because that's what they heard, because whatever. As opposed to pausing and saying, I wonder what I need right now. I do feel like I've been sort of mindlessly eating carbs, and it feels like it's excessive and it doesn't feel good in my body. So I wonder what it would look like to bring more awareness to my eating and how many carbs I would eat at that point. So it's not the pre-deciding of like, this is what I'm going to do. This is what needs to happen. I just need to work really hard. I just need to do this and that, and then everything will be fine. Instead, it's, what if I pause? What if I get curious? What if I breathe into it? What if I notice what my body's asking for? What else could be needed here? And then moving from that space, which could sometimes be the exact same thing, right? But the energy is drastically different. Energy, and I guess another example of this would be dating. If you go up to someone and you're feeling really desperate, you've been single for a long time, but you're a good person, you've got a lot of things to offer, you think you'd be a great partner for someone, but there's an energy of desperation of like, I just don't want to be single anymore. And then you go and you hit on someone, they're automatically going to be like, oh, energy's off here. Something's off. Like, this person seems like a good person, but there's a weird energy of something. They may not even be able to say desperation, but there's some weird energy present and they feel it, and it's a turn off. As opposed to, you're in this place where you've kind of self-reflected. You're like, man, I really like to be in a relationship. I'm not going to force it. I'm just going to let it sort of unfold. I'm still going to go out and be social and meet people and put myself in positions where I could potentially meet someone, but I'm not going to force it to happen. I don't need it to happen. I'm accepting things as they are. And whatever happens, happens. And if I feel inclined to go talk to someone and that feels like the right thing to do, then I'll do that. And that energy is so much more attractive to the person that you would potentially be hitting on than the one I mentioned before. All right, number 6, acceptance. I sort of just said this, but it's seeing things as they actually are in the present. It's often reached after extreme emotions, or I'll say extreme situations. Like for me, I didn't have acceptance for my body when I was dealing with weight issues until I was almost killed in a car accident. And then it was like after that, I'm like, who cares? Like, who cares about 25, 35 pounds? Like, I can live with that the rest of my life. I cannot, live if I'm being hit by a bunch of cars, right? Obviously. So it just like completely allowed me to accept everything as it was. Like everything became less important that wasn't truly important. And that allowed my body to heal. Healing is when you come to terms with things as they are, and you meet those needs of what they really are when you're there. And that is exactly what happened, when I was in the car accident and I just accepted everything. I stopped forcing, I stopped striving, I had to stop trying to get the weight off because I couldn't move. But even energetically, I was like, enough is enough. Who cares? And at that point, and reminding everybody that when I was after the car accident, I couldn't move. I was lying on a couch all day, every day, and I lost 10 pounds. And I'm not talking about muscle. Because at the time I was a personal trainer and I had ways to measure body fat. So I was losing fat laying there on the couch. That came from it came from acceptance. It came from allowing my body to actually heal, to be in its ideal state, so that the metabolism was better and things like that. We waste all this energy denying and resisting what's already true. Like, yes, I didn't like what was going on with my weight at the time, but that's what it was. So why am I going to fight with it? Why be at war with it? All this energy being drained by me fighting what's actually happening. The minute you accept, okay, this is what's happening. Acceptance is not resignation. It's not, oh, well, I guess this is the way it is forever. It's just like, why am I pretending what's happening isn't happening? It is. It is what it is, right? I kind of hate that statement, but it makes sense here. Um, so it creates all this tension, and we're so busy denying and forcing and struggling that we have very little energy left for actually healing and growing. And the body, when it's in a healing state, it requires a lot of energy. So when I see people dieting and exercising like crazy, I'm thinking, oh my goodness, it's all this energy devoted to not accepting what is, because it's not about, oh, I'm trying to get healthy. That's what we lie and tell ourselves. It's not. It's about trying to change what's currently happening. And I get that that makes logical sense. Why would I not try to change this body if I want it to be lighter? But it's the energy of non-acceptance. It's, I hate this so much, I need to go change it. And so all the energy of my what I'm devoting to what I'm doing is coming from that place. This is true of cornhole as well. People have a bad tournament. I need to get better. I need to practice more. I need to throw more bags. And it's this forced non-acceptance of like, maybe I was tired that day, or maybe there's something I'm missing skill wise, or maybe I need to work on my mindset. It's not that. It's, I will out throw the emotional roller coaster that was that shitty tournament, and I refuse to accept that's what happened, and that's what I did, and that potentially I might not be as good as I thought I was, or whatever the thoughts and feelings are. Where like, I refuse to accept it. I'm gonna go out practice. I'm gonna hustle. I'm gonna change this. I'm gonna make sure it's different for the future. And that energy is what keeps us there, right? We're denying, we're forcing, we're struggling, and there's nothing left to actually see change. So acceptance is not liking everything. It's not passive. It's not tolerating. It's not, this is how it has to be. It's just saying, that's what happened, or this is what's happening, and I'm not going to fight with it. I'm just going to accept that that is what's happening right now. And then I'm going to take a pause, take a breath, get curious, become aware before I even make a step in what direction to go. So before saying, I just need to practice more, that's the problem, you pause and you give yourself 24, 48 hours. Give yourself some time and space in that 24 to 48 hours to breathe and check in with your body and check in with yourself and say, what do I think really happened? What state was I in during that tournament or that game or that match, or I didn't throw well? What else could I possibly need to be a better cornhole player, right? It's that kind of. So it's just not fighting with what is. That's all that acceptance is. It's not complacency. That is the biggest lie about acceptance. Letting go kind of piggybacks off of this, not attachment. So we want to prolong and create again and again pleasant thoughts and experiences. That obviously is what we're striving to do as humans. We want, like I said, it's really easy to be present and aware when we're getting a massage, when everything's pleasant and great. And then we want to get rid of and prevent unpleasant experiences. So we're constantly trying to control this dynamic of like, I only want positive, pleasant feeling thoughts and experiences, and I want to avoid at every cost anything unpleasant. And then when we observe our mind grasping and pushing away, we remind ourselves to let go of these impulses on purpose. It's like, I cannot control every experience and thought I have in my life. Like sometimes it's pleasant, sometimes it's unpleasant. Like I can't try to force everything to be one way, or it's probably going to be more unpleasant than anything. And this can be really challenging, so you can direct your attention to what holding on feels like. Excuse me. Holding on feels like. So what does it feel like when you're gripping something tightly, like I need this to happen, I can't handle this, I need every bag to go in the hole, I can't handle if I miss, or like I'm clenching my fists? It's like, what about that energy of holding on to something and saying like, no, I will not let this go. I will not let go of my need to get rid of all carbs and sugar. I will not let go of my need to work out like a maniac even though I'm exhausted. Like that gripping, that tension, how is that helping to move you towards where you want to go, especially if your goal is lightness and expansiveness and relaxation and peace and right, like that's the antithesis of everything I'm doing. If you think you can't let go, and then I remind you that every night you go to sleep, you do. You let go whenever you go to sleep. That's how you fall asleep. So um, that also means if you have a hard time falling asleep, you might have a hard time letting go. And that is a difficult thing. I get it. It's difficult to completely surrender to what's happening because we tell ourselves that the more we grip, the more we control, the more we have our hands on it, the better it will be. And it's not. Sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't, but it gives this illusion of control. We think we're controlling it, we think we're holding on to it and making things happen. We're not actually, it's an illusion. And the more we can admit that it's an illusion and that we don't need to control things and it's not our job to hold on to everything and make everything happen, and that we can let it go, we can be unattached, we can trust where life is taking us, like that is going to bring your goals to you faster than anything you could ever do. It's such an important lesson, and I believe that's okay. So here's some ideas. Um, you can replace some of your coping strategies like drugs, alcohol, TV, food, cell phone, things like that. And by the way, no judgment. I love alcohol, I love TV, I love food. There's nothing wrong with any of things inherently. It's just if we are relying on them, it's an interesting relationship to get curious about. I love the Meditation Oasis podcast. That's a free podcast you can use to do some meditations. And when I say do, I mean literally press play and listen. That's the whole job. You can't do it wrong. There's no way to meditate, but they are nice to listen to, and they enforce the ideas that we've been talking about today in mindfulness. John Kabat-Zinn, who's came up with mindfulness-based stress reduction, has a lot of resources out there for you. You can look him up. He's also got a book where a lot of this stuff came from. I'm totally blanking on the name of the book because it's been such a long time. John Kabat-Zinn. What is that book called? Can't remember. But you can look him up. You can schedule moments of presence on your phone and to focus and breathe. Like if you're at your work day, you can maybe every hour, it just alarm goes off and just reminds you to take a few deep breaths. And then you can practice mindfulness everywhere. So if you're washing the dishes, just wash the dishes. We call it solo tasking, right? We're usually big fans of multitasking, but what would solo tasking look like? What would it look like to just focus on the one thing you're doing right in front of you? And that's going to help calm down a lot of the chaos in the mind. I think that is the end here. So yeah, that's it for today. And hopefully this was helpful for you guys. If you're listening to it later and you have questions, you can always pop them in the comments. And yeah, let's bring mindfulness into your world, into cornhole, into all aspects of your life. It's only going to make things better. And yeah, that's kind of what we got today. So next month will be a little different. I'll be traveling most of next month, so I'm not sure when I'll be doing some free little talks for you guys. It might be taking the month off. I'll keep you updated. But if there's any topics or questions you have, or topics you're interested in learning more about, or something I said quickly today that you want more on, just let me know and I'll be happy to do that. And yeah, see you guys next time.